The sun was dying. At least, that is what it looked like from the surface of 7. The orange light filtered through layers of dust that never seemed to settle, painting everything in shades of rust and brown. The air itself tasted like metal, and every breath reminded the people who lived there that this world was slowly killing them. Was 12 years old. She had been born on this planet and she had never seen rain. She had heard stories about it from the older people in the settlement. They talked about water falling from the sky like it was magic, like it was something from a dream. Did not believe in dreams anymore. She believed in survival. Her small house sat at the edge of the settlement, built from metal sheets and hope. The walls were thin, and when the wind blew, the whole structure shook like it might fall apart. Inside, there was only one room. A cooking area in one corner, a small table in another, and 2 beds pushed against the far wall. On one of those beds, his mother lay dying. Had been beautiful once. Had seen pictures from before when her mother was young and the colony was new. In those pictures, smiled with her whole face, her eyes bright and full of life. Now, her skin stretched tight over her bones and her lips were cracked and bleeding. She had not opened her eyes in 3 days. The water sickness. That is what people called it, though it was really just another word for dying of thirst. The human body needed water to live, and there was not enough water on 7. Not anymore. Dipped a cloth into a small bowl of water. The bowl was almost empty. She had used most of the day's ration to wet the cloth, and now she pressed it gently against her mother's forehead. The skin felt hot, too hot, like fire burning beneath the surface. "It's okay, Mother," whispered. "I'm going to get more water today. The distribution center opens soon. Maybe they will give us extra because you are sick." Did not respond. Her chest rose and fell in slow, shallow breaths, but she gave no sign that she heard her daughter's words. Sat back and looked around the small room. Everything they owned fit in this space. A few clothes hanging on hooks, some cooking pots that had not been used in weeks because there was nothing to cook. A picture on the wall showing as a baby, held in her mother's arms, both of them smiling. She stood up and walked to the door. Outside, the settlement was waking up. People moved through the dusty streets with their heads down, carrying empty containers toward the distribution center. Nobody talked. Nobody laughed. This was not a place for happiness. The settlement had a name once. New Hope, the first colonists had called it. That was 2 generations ago, when humans first came to 7 with dreams of building a new home among the stars. The Galactic Consortium had promised them paradise. They had shown pictures of green fields and blue lakes, of cities rising toward the sky. They had lied. The truth was that 7 had always been a harsh world. The water was deep underground, hard to reach, expensive to purify. But the consortium did not care about the colonists. They cared about the minerals in the rocks, the rare metals that powered starships across the galaxy. The humans were just workers, brought here to dig and die. Joined the line at the distribution center. There were already hundreds of people ahead of her, standing quietly in the morning heat. The line moved slowly, crawling forward 1 step at a time. Guards stood at the entrance, tall aliens called with 4 arms and skin the color of stone. They carried weapons that could kill a human with a single shot, and they looked at the colonists like they were insects. 2 hours passed. His throat burned with thirst, but she did not touch the small container she carried. That water was for her mother, not for her. She could wait. She had learned to wait. Finally, she reached the front of the line. A guard looked down at her, his 4 eyes narrowing with disgust. "Name and identification," he said in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. "Sector 7, Housing Unit 43. She held up the small card that every colonist carried. The guard scanned it with a device on his wrist. "Your ration has already been collected today." Felt her heart drop. No, that was yesterday's ration. Today is a new day, and my mother is sick. She needs the medical allocation, please. The guard made a sound that might have been a laugh. Medical allocations require documentation from a certified health official. Do you have documentation? The medic said she would send it. Please, my mother is dying. She worked at the purification plant for 20 years. She helped make the water that everyone drinks. Please, she just needs a little more. Step aside, you are holding up the line. Did not move. Something inside her, something that had been building for months, finally broke free. No, my mother is dying because you take all the water. Everyone knows it. The aquifer is not empty. You send the water to the orbital stations where your kind lives in comfort while we die down here. My mother gave her life to this colony and you are killing her. The guard's 4 arms moved fast. Before could react, he grabbed her by the shoulder and threw her to the ground. Her container flew from her hands, landing in the dust. The little water inside spilled out, disappearing into the dry earth in seconds. Stupid human, the guard said. Be grateful we let you live at all. Lay in the dust, watching the last drops of water vanish. Around her, the other colonists looked away. They were afraid. They were always afraid. A hand appeared in front of her face. Looked up and saw a man she did not recognize. He was human, maybe 40 years old, with tired eyes and rough hands. He wore the clothes of a worker from the moisture farm outside the settlement. Take my hand, he said quietly. Grabbed his hand and let him pull her to her feet. She looked at the ground where her water had spilled and felt tears burning in her eyes. But she would not cry. Not here. Not in front of the guards. Thank you, she whispered. The man nodded. What is your name? I am Park. He looked at her with something in his eyes that she could not identify. It was not pity. It was something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. Your mother is sick. The water sickness. She needs clean water, but they won't give us the medical ration. Was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the distribution center, at the guards, at the long line of desperate humans waiting for drops of water that would never be enough. Then he looked back at. Go home, he said. Take care of your mother. I will find you tonight. Why, what can you do? Did not answer the question. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small container, sealed and full of water, more water than had seen in weeks. He pressed it into her hands. Take this, do not let anyone see it, go now. Before could say anything, turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. She stood there for a moment, holding the container against her chest like it was the most precious thing in the universe, because it was. Then she ran home as fast as her legs could carry her. That night, for the first time in days, opened her eyes. She looked at her daughter, at the cup of clean water held to her lips, and she smiled. Where did you get this? Asked, her voice barely a whisper. A man gave it to me, said. His name is, he said he would come tonight. Drank slowly, carefully, savoring each drop like it was life itself, because it was. Outside, the sun set over the dust world, painting the sky in colors that almost looked like hope. Park had arrived on 3 months ago, carrying nothing but a worn bag and a heart full of ghosts. He had come on a transport ship filled with other refugees, people running from wars and famines and broken dreams. Nobody asked questions on those ships. Nobody wanted to know the answers. He found work at the moisture farm, a place where ancient machines tried to pull water from the thin air. The farm sat 2 kilometers outside the settlement, surrounded by nothing but dust and silence. Every day, walked to work in the orange light of dawn and walked home in the purple shadows of evening. He spoke to no one. He made no friends. He wanted only to disappear. But some things cannot be forgotten, no matter how far you run. At night, lay on his small bed in the workers' dormitory and stared at the ceiling. He thought about the past. He thought about the person he used to be before everything went wrong. He thought about 3,000 people who died because he had not been strong enough to stop it. The nightmares came every time he closed his eyes. He saw their faces, the colonists of station, reaching out to him as the contaminated water poisoned their bodies. He heard their screams echoing through the corridors. He felt their blood on his hands, even though he had never touched them. It was not his fault. He knew that. The consortium official had ordered the faulty system installed against warnings. The forged documents had used his name without his knowledge, but knowing the truth did not make the guilt go away. Those people were dead and had not saved them. So he had run. For 10 years he had moved from planet to planet, station to station, always searching for a place where the memories could not find him. 7 was supposed to be the end of his journey, a dying world for a dying man, a place to finally stop running. Then he saw the girl in the dust. Something about reminded of himself of the person he had been before station broke him. She had fire in her eyes, a refusal to accept the world as it was. When the guard threw her to the ground, she did not cry. She did not beg. She just looked up at him with anger and determination, like she was already planning how to fight back. Had given her his water ration without thinking. He had promised to find her without knowing why. And now, as he walked through the settlement towards Sector 7, he wondered what he was doing. The streets were empty at night. A curfew kept the colonists inside after dark, enforced by patrols that walked the dusty roads with weapons ready. Moved carefully, staying in the shadows, using skills he had learned long ago on ships where danger waited around every corner. He found housing Unit 43 at the edge of the settlement. The building was small and fragile, like everything else on this world. A dim light glowed through the thin walls and could hear voices inside. He knocked softly on the door. It opened and stood there, her eyes wide with surprise. Behind her could see a woman lying on a bed, propped up against pillows, holding a cup in her trembling hands. The woman looked weak but alive. The water had helped. "You came," said. "I said I would." Stepped aside and let him enter. The room was small and bare, but clean. Someone had tried to make it feel like a home, with pictures on the walls and cloth covering the rough metal surfaces. Noticed these small touches of beauty and felt a pain in his chest that he could not explain. "Mother, this is the man I told you about." Looked at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering. She was younger than had expected, maybe only a few years older than him, but the water sickness had aged her face. Still, there was strength in her gaze, a quiet dignity that made him feel ashamed of his own weakness. "Thank you for the water," said. Her voice was soft but clear. "You saved my life." "Your daughter is brave," said. She stood up to the guards. Not many people do that. "She is stubborn like her father was." A shadow passed over his face. "He died in the mines 3 years ago. A tunnel collapse. The consortium said it was an accident, but we all know they do not care if humans die. We are just tools to them." Nodded. He had seen the same thing on every world where the consortium held power. Humans were useful for their labor, but worthless as people. The aliens who ran the galaxy did not hate humans. They simply did not think about them at all. "How long have you been sick?" he asked. 3 weeks this time. It comes and goes. The water sickness takes everything from you slowly. Your strength, your hope, your will to live. I have watched it kill my friends, my neighbors. Now it is trying to kill me." Sat on the edge of her mother's bed and took her hand. The gesture was so gentle, so full of love, that had to look away. "Why did you help us?" asked him. "You do not know us. Water is precious here. You gave us your ration." Was quiet for a long moment. How could he explain something he did not understand himself? How could he tell them about Station, about the 3,000 dead, about the years of running and hiding and trying to forget? "I used to be an engineer," he said finally, "a water engineer. I designed systems that could bring water to places where there was none. I saved lives." He paused and his voice grew heavy. "Then I failed. People died because of my failure. I have been running from that failure ever since." Studied him with knowing eyes. "Running never works. The past follows us wherever we go." "I know." So why are you here in my home telling us this? Looked at the fierce hope that still burned in her young eyes despite everything this world had done to her. He thought about the guard at the distribution center, about the water spilled in the dust, about the hundreds of humans waiting in line for drops that would never be enough. Because I think I can help, he said. I think I can build something, a machine that can find water where the consortium says there is none, but I cannot do it alone. Leaned forward, her eyes bright. What kind of machine? A molecular extractor. It pulls hydrogen and oxygen from the minerals in the rock and combines them into water. The technology is old, but the consortium keeps it secret. They do not want colonists to have independent water sources. They want us dependent on them. Can you really build such a thing? Asked. Yes, but I will need parts, tools, access to the old mining tunnels beneath the settlement. And I will need someone to help me, someone small enough to fit into spaces where I cannot go. All three of them looked at. The girl's face showed no fear, only determination. I can do it, she said. I know the tunnels. I have explored them before, looking for anything useful. The consortium thinks they are empty, but there are things down there. Old machines, forgotten equipment. Gripped her daughter's hand. It is dangerous if the consortium finds out. If we do nothing, you will die, said simply. Everyone will die slowly, one by one. I am not going to let that happen. Saw tears forming in his eyes, but she nodded. She understood. Sometimes the greatest danger is doing nothing at all. We must be careful, said. Tell no one what we are doing. The consortium has spies everywhere. If they learn about this before we are ready, they will destroy everything. Nodded. When do we start? Looked out the small window at the dark sky above. Somewhere up there, the orbital stations floated in luxury, their inhabitants never knowing thirst or fear. Somewhere up there, the consortium officials planned the slow death of this colony without losing a moment of sleep. Tomorrow, he said, we start tomorrow. That night, walked back to the workers' dormitory with something new burning in his chest. It took him a long time to recognize it, because he had not felt it in so many years. It was purpose. For the first time since station, he had a reason to live. Not for himself, but for a sick woman and her brave daughter, and for all the humans on this dying world who deserved better than the slow death the consortium had planned for them. He would build his machine. He would find water in the stone, and if the consortium tried to stop him, he would fight. Because that is what humans do. They fight, they hope, they never give up. Even on a dust world at the edge of the galaxy, even when all seems lost, humans find a way to survive. The tunnels beneath the settlement were dark and deep, carved into the rock generations ago by the first mining machines. The consortium had abandoned them years before, claiming the minerals were exhausted, but knew better. She had been exploring these tunnels since she was 8 years old, mapping their twists and turns in her mind, learning their secrets. Now she led through the darkness with a small light strapped to her forehead. The beam cut through the black air like a knife, showing walls of red and brown stone, ancient support beams holding up the weight of the world above. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, a sound that made both of them stop and listen. There is water down here, said. I have heard it before, but I could never find where it comes from. Ran his hand along the tunnel wall. His fingers came away damp and he brought them to his lips. Fresh, he said, not contaminated. The aquifer runs through these rocks. The consortium told everyone it was empty, but they lied. Why would they lie? Control's voice was bitter. If the colony has its own water source, it does not need the consortium. The colonists could refuse to work in the mines. They could demand better treatment. They could even leave this world and start fresh somewhere else. The consortium cannot allow that. Thought about this as they walked deeper into the tunnels. She had grown up believing that there was simply not enough water, that the planet was dying, that there was nothing anyone could do. Now she learned that it was all a lie, a story told to keep humans weak and afraid. The anger she felt was cold and hard, like a stone in her stomach. They reached a large chamber where several tunnels came together. Old mining equipment sat in the darkness, covered in dust and rust. Machines that had not moved in decades, abandoned and forgotten, walked among them, examining each one with careful eyes. "This will work," he said, pointing to a large metal box with pipes coming out of its sides. "This is a mineral processor. The consortium used it to extract metals from the rock. With some changes, I can turn it into a molecular extractor." "What do you need?" "Power cells first. The old ones are dead. We need new ones, or I need to find a way to connect to geothermal energy from the planet's core." He moved to another machine, a smaller device with a cracked screen. "And I need processing chips. The old ones are damaged. Without them, the machine cannot separate hydrogen and oxygen properly." Made a list in her mind. Power cells were rare, expensive, and controlled by the consortium. Processing chips were even harder to find. This would not be easy. "The workers at the moisture farm might have power cells," she said. "Some of them sell things on the black market. And there is a woman named who works at the food distribution center. She knows everyone. She might know where to find processing chips." Looked at her with surprise. "You know the black market?" "Everyone knows the black market. It is the only way to survive here." He nodded slowly. "You are wise for your age." "I had to grow up fast. This world does not give you a choice." They spent the next hour exploring the chamber, gathering tools and parts that said he could use. Crawled into narrow spaces that he could not fit, pulling out cables and connectors and small devices that had been hidden in the shadows for years. By the time they climbed back to the surface, the first light of dawn was painting the sky orange. Over the following weeks, they worked in secret. Went to her regular duties during the day, standing in line at the distribution center, helping her mother with small tasks around the house. But at night, she disappeared into the tunnels with carrying parts and tools, watching as he slowly built something that could change everything. Joined them on the fourth day. She was young, maybe 20 years old, with quick hands and quicker thoughts. She had grown up on Seven, just like, and she had lost her entire family to the water sickness. When told her what they were doing, did not ask questions. She simply nodded and asked how she could help. She brought processing chips, stolen from a broken food scanner that the consortium had thrown away. She brought power cells, traded from workers who asked no questions. She brought information about consortium patrol schedules, about which guards could be bribed and which ones were true believers. Then came an old man with white hair and hands that shook when he walked, but his mind was sharp, and his eyes held memories of fire. 50 years ago, on a distant world called Prime, had fought in a human rebellion against consortium rule. The rebellion had failed, and had spent 20 years in a prison camp before being sent to Seven as punishment. "I thought my fighting days were over," he told them one night in the tunnel chamber. "But seeing what you are doing here, seeing humans stand up again, it makes me remember why I fought in the first place." "What happened to the rebellion on Prime?" asked. His face grew dark. "We were betrayed. Someone told the consortium our plans and they crushed us before we could act. But we taught them something important. We taught them that humans will always resist. No matter how many of us they kill, no matter how hard they try to break us, we will always fight back." Listened to these words in silence. He thought about his own past, about Station, about the years he had spent running from his failure. He had believed that his skills were cursed, that everything he built would be corrupted and destroyed. But here, in this tunnel, surrounded by people who refused to give up, he began to believe something different. Maybe his skills were not a curse. Maybe they were a gift, waiting to be used for something good. The machine took shape slowly. Worked on it every night, connecting wires and pipes, adjusting settings, testing systems. It was delicate work and many times things went wrong. Parts broke. Connections failed. Once, a small explosion filled the chamber with smoke and nearly sets clothes on fire. But he did not give up. None of them did. On the night the machine was finished, all four of them stood in the chamber and looked at what they had built. It was not beautiful. It was a collection of old parts and stolen equipment, held together with hope and determination. But to them, it was the most beautiful thing in the universe. "Will it work?" asked. Took a deep breath. There is only one way to find out. He pressed a button on the control panel. For a long moment, nothing happened. The machine sat silent and dark and felt her heart sinking. After all this work, after all this hope, would it fail? Then a soft humming sound filled the chamber. Lights flickered on across the machine's surface. The pipes began to vibrate, and somewhere deep inside, gears began to turn. A thin stream of liquid appeared at the output pipe. It was clear and pure, catching the light from there like a tiny river of stars. Water. Reached out and let the water flow over her fingers. It was cold and clean, the most beautiful thing she had ever felt. She brought her hand to her mouth and tasted it, and tears began to fall down her cheeks. "It works," she whispered. "It actually works." Stood beside her, and for the first time since she had met him, he smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad around the edges, but real. "Yes," he said, "it works." Laughed, a sound that echoed through the chamber like music. Hugged, and both of them cried with joy. But even in that moment of happiness, knew the truth. Building the machine was only the first step. Now they had to protect it, and the consortium would not let them keep it without a fight. "We need to move fast," he said. "We need to bring water to the surface, share it with the colony, make everyone understand what we have done. Once the people see that water is possible, the consortium will not be able to stop them." "The guards will come," said. "They will try to destroy everything. Then we will be ready for them." Looked at each of them, these humans who had chosen to fight instead of surrender. We did not come this far to fail now. Thought about her mother, lying in her bed at home, still weak but alive. She thought about all the people in the settlement who were dying slowly, day by day, waiting for water that never came. She thought about the guard who had thrown her in the dust, who had laughed at her suffering. "I am not afraid," she said. "Let them come." And in that moment, standing in a tunnel beneath a dying world, surrounded by water that should not exist, the first sparks of revolution began to burn. The news spread through the settlement like fire through dry grass. At first, people did not believe it. Water from the rock. A machine that could make clean water without the consortium. It sounded like a dream, a story told to give false hope to desperate people. Then they saw it with their own eyes. And her friends carried containers of water to the surface, distributing them quietly at first, one family at a time. They went to the sickest people, the ones who were closest to death, and gave them water that tasted like life itself. Word spread from house to house, from neighbor to neighbor, until the whole settlement was buzzing with whispers. The girl from Sector 7 found water. There is a machine in the tunnels. The aquifer is not empty. The consortium lied to us. Within days, the tunnel chamber became a gathering place. People came in small groups, careful to avoid the consortium patrols, and they saw the machine working with their own eyes. They filled their containers and carried them home, and for the first time in years, the settlement began to feel something it had almost forgotten. Hope grew stronger each day. The color returned to her face, and she began to walk again, slowly at first, then with more confidence. She joined her daughter in the tunnels, helping to organize the water distribution, keeping records of who had received supplies and who still needed them. "You saved me," told one evening. "You saved all of us." "Your daughter saved you," replied. "I just built a machine. She is the one who had the courage to use it." But even as hope grew, so did danger. The consortium noticed that something was wrong. The colonists were not as desperate as before. They were not fighting each other for water rations. They were not begging and crying at the distribution center. Something had changed, and the consortium did not like change. The first patrol came on a Tuesday night. 6 guards with weapons and scanners, searching the settlement for illegal activity. Watch from her window as they walked through the streets, their 4 arms holding devices that could detect hidden water sources. "They are looking for the machine," she said. Stood beside her, his face calm but his eyes alert. "They will find nothing on the surface. The machine is too deep underground, and we have been careful to hide our tracks. But someone could talk, someone could betray us." "Yes, that is always the risk." He looked at her. "Are you afraid?" Thought about the question. She remembered the guard at the distribution center, the one who had thrown her in the dust. She remembered her mother's cracked lips, her fevered dreams, the slow death that had been creeping through their home. She remembered standing in line for hours, hopping for drops of water that would never be enough. "No," she said, "I am not afraid, I am angry." The patrols continued for a week, then 2. The guards searched houses and questioned workers. They offered rewards for information about the illegal water source. Some people considered taking the reward. Life on 7 was hard, and the consortium's money could buy comfort, could buy passage off this dying world. But nobody talked. It was who explained it to one night in the tunnel. "The consortium has ruled through fear for generations," he said. "They taught us that we are alone, that we cannot trust each other, that our only hope is to serve them. But you have shown these people something different. You have shown them that humans can work together, can help each other, can build something the consortium cannot control." "I did not do anything special. I just wanted to save my mother." "That is exactly what makes it special," smiled, and for a moment he looked young again, like the rebel he had been 50 years ago. The greatest revolutions do not start with grand ideas. They start with simple love. A daughter who wants to save her mother. A man who wants to use his skills for good. Ordinary people who refuse to accept that suffering is all they deserve. The machine continued to work. Every day it pulled water from the stone, enough for the whole settlement and more. Began training others to operate it, teaching them the principles of molecular extraction, showing them how to maintain and repair the equipment. If something happened to him, the knowledge would survive. But the consortium was not finished. On the 14th day, a new ship arrived in orbit. It was a military vessel, larger and more powerful than anything the colonists had ever seen. Within hours, the commander landed at the distribution center and called all colonists to assemble. His name was, and he was known throughout the sector as a problem solver. When colonies refused to work, made them work. When rebellions started, ended them. He had crushed the uprising on Prime, had destroyed the resistance on a dozen other worlds. Now he had come to 7. "We know about your illegal water source," announced to the assembled colonists. His voice was cold and hard, like metal scraping against stone. "You have 1 day to reveal its location and surrender the humans responsible. If you do not, we will search every tunnel, every building, every hole in the ground until we find it ourselves. And when we do, everyone who helped will be executed." The colonists stood in silence, fear spreading through the crowd like a disease. They looked at each other, wondering who would break, who would speak, who would betray the secret that had given them hope. Nobody moved. Waited, his 4 eyes scanning the crowd. He saw the fear, but he saw something else too, something he had not expected: defiance. Quiet, stubborn defiance that refused to bend. "Very well," he said, "you have chosen your fate." That night the settlement gathered in the tunnels. Not just the original group, but everyone. Hundreds of colonists crowded into the chamber where the machine hummed its quiet song, looking at each other with determination in their eyes. Stood before them. He had not planned to give a speech. He had never been good with words. But as he looked at these people, these humans who had chosen to stand together instead of breaking apart, he knew he had to say something. They want us to be afraid, he said. They have always wanted us to be afraid. Fear is how they control us, how they keep us working in their minds and dying on their schedules. But we have discovered something they did not want us to know. We can survive without them. We can build what we need with our own hands. We can help each other instead of fighting each other. He paused, looking at standing near the front of the crowd. She was 12 years old, just a child, but her eyes held more courage than most adults he had ever known. Tomorrow they will come with soldiers and weapons. They will try to destroy what we have built. They will threaten to kill us if we do not surrender. But I want to ask you something. What kind of life is surrender? Working until we die, watching our children die, knowing that there is water beneath our feet but being told we cannot have it. Is that really living? The colonists murmured among themselves. Some looked scared, some looked uncertain, but others, more than had expected, looked ready. I am not asking you to die, he continued. I am asking you to live, really live for the first time since this colony was founded. Stand with us tomorrow. Show the consortium that humans cannot be broken. Show them that we are not tools, not insects, not things to be used and thrown away. Show them what happens when ordinary people refuse to be afraid. Stepped forward, I will stand. Raised his old hand, I will stand. Still weak but standing on her own feet, put her arm around. We will stand. One by one, voices rose throughout the chamber. Men and women, old and young, sick and healthy. They had nothing to fight with except tools and rocks and their own bodies. They knew they might die tomorrow, but they also knew that some things are worth dying for. Looked at her mother, then at the crowd of humans who had found their courage. She thought about the water flowing from the machine, the water that had saved her mother's life, the water that had given hope to a dying world. They think they can break us, she said quietly. They are wrong. Tomorrow, the consortium would come with all its power and all its weapons. But tonight, in a tunnel beneath a dust world at the edge of the galaxy, humanity had already won something more important than any battle. They had won back their spirit. The sun rose over 7 like a warning. Orange light spread across the dust, painting the settlement in shades of fire and blood. In the distance, the consortium transport ships descended from the orbital station, their engines screaming through the thin atmosphere. Commander had kept his promise. He was coming. Stood at the entrance to the main tunnel, her heart beating fast but her hands steady. Around her, the colonists had gathered, filling the narrow streets between their small houses. They carried mining tools and metal pipes, anything they could use as weapons. They looked afraid, but they did not run. Stood beside her, watching the ships land at the edge of the settlement. Soldiers poured out of the transports, warriors in armor that glittered in the morning light. They formed into ranks and began marching toward the colony, their weapons ready. There are so many of them, said from somewhere behind. It does not matter how many there are, replied. His voice was calm, like a man who had faced death before and was no longer frightened of it. What matters is that we are here. Commander walked at the head of his army. He was tall even for his 4 arms thick with muscle, his stone-colored skin marked with scars from 100 battles. When he reached the edge of the settlement, he stopped and looked at the colonists with something like amusement in his 4 eyes. This is your rebellion, he called out. Farmers and children with tools. I have crushed real warriors on a dozen worlds. You are nothing. Nobody answered. The colonists stood in silence, blocking the streets, their faces set with determination. Laughed, very well. I gave you a chance to surrender. You chose death instead. He raised one of his arms, preparing to give the order to attack. Stepped forward. She was small, barely reaching the chest of the adult humans around her, but she walked with her back straight and her head high. The soldiers looked at her with confusion. Why was a child walking toward them? You are wrong about us, said. Her voice was clear and strong, carrying through the morning air. You think we are weak because we are human. You think we will break because we always have before. but you do not understand what we have learned. Stared at her. What could a child teach me? We learned that we are stronger together than alone. We learned that water exists beneath this world, enough for everyone, and that you have been lying to us to keep us under your control. We learned that one person with courage can change everything. She pointed back at the tunnel entrance, where the soft hum of the molecular extractor could be heard if you listened carefully. You can kill us today, all of us, but it will not matter. The design for our machine has already been sent to other colonies. Humans on 17 different worlds are building their own water sources right now. Even if you destroy everything here, you cannot stop what has already started. His face changed. The amusement disappeared, replaced by something colder. You are lying. Am I? Smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had already won. Check your communications, ask your superiors. The message went out 3 days ago, hidden in the regular data transmissions. By now, every human colony in this sector knows the truth. The aquifers are not empty. The consortium has been stealing our water, and we know how to take it back. For a long moment, nobody moved, stood frozen, his mind processing what the girl had said. He knew she might be bluffing, but something in her eyes told him she was not. She was too confident, too calm. She believed what she was saying. He pulled out a communication device and spoke rapidly in the language. The response came quickly, and as he listened, his stone face grew darker and darker. It was true, all of it. The message had been received on 7 colonies already, and humans were gathering in the streets, demanding answers. The consortium's control, built on lies and fear, was crumbling. It does not matter, growled, putting away the device. Even if other colonies know, I will make an example here. I will destroy your machine, kill your leaders, and show everyone what happens to humans who resist. Then do it. The voice came from the crowd. It was Smother, walking forward to stand beside her daughter. She was still weak, still recovering from the water sickness, but her eyes burned with a fire that made the soldiers step back. Do it, she repeated. Kill us, all of us. Show the galaxy what the consortium really is. Show them that you murder children and sick women. Show them that you cannot defeat humans with truth, so you defeat them with violence. More colonists stepped forward. Workers from the moisture farm, families with children, old people who could barely stand. One by one, they moved to the front, standing between the soldiers and the tunnel entrance. You will have to kill all of us, said. Every single one, and even then you will not have one, because the galaxy is watching now. Other species are watching, and they are asking themselves, if the consortium will do this to humans, what will they do to us? Looked at his soldiers. Some of them had lowered their weapons. But they were not monsters. They had families too, children, dreams. Killing unarmed colonists, killing children, was not what they had signed up for. The standoff lasted for 3 hours. Raged and threatened, he called for reinforcements. He demanded that the colonists surrender, but the colonists did not move. They stood in the dust under the orange sun, their faces calm, their spirits unbroken. Finally, a message came from the orbital station. Listened, and his 4 shoulders sagged in defeat. The consortium leadership had decided. The situation on 7 was attracting too much attention. Other species were asking questions. Trade partners were expressing concern. The cost of crushing this rebellion would be greater than the cost of letting it succeed. You have won, said 2. His voice was bitter, filled with hate, but also with something that might have been respect. For now, but the consortium has a long memory. We will not forget this. Neither will we, replied. The soldiers, the transport ships rose into the sky and disappeared, and the colonists of 7 stood in the streets of their settlement and watched them go. That night there was celebration, not with food or drink because those were still scarce, but with something more precious, with laughter, with music, with the simple joy of being alive and free. Humans danced in the dust under the stars, and for the first time in generations, they felt like they owned this world. Found sitting alone at the edge of the celebration, looking up at the sky. He sat down beside her, and for a while they did not speak. "What happens now?" asked finally. "Now we build. We expand the water system. We teach others how to make their own machines. We become strong, so strong that the consortium can never threaten us again." "Do you think it will work? Do you think we can really change things?" Thought about the question. He thought about Station, about the 3,000 people who had died because of his failure. He thought about the years he had spent running, hiding, believing that he could never make a difference. "I used to think that one person could not change anything," he said. "I thought the universe was too big, the problems too complicated, the enemies too powerful. But you showed me something different. You showed me that change starts small. A girl who wants to save her mother. A man who decides to use his skills for good. Ordinary people who refuse to accept that suffering is all they deserve." He looked at her, this 12-year-old girl who had faced down an army. "Yes," he said, "I think it will work because of you." Years passed. The design for the molecular extractor spread across human space like wildfire. Colony after colony built their own water sources, breaking free from consortium control. Humans began to trade with each other, to support each other, to build something new and independent. Grew up. She studied engineering, politics, diplomacy. She learned how to speak to crowds, how to negotiate with aliens, how to fight with words instead of weapons. And when she was 30 years old, she became the first human representative to the Galactic Council, where she fought for the rights of colonists across the galaxy. When reporters asked her about her success, she always told the same story, about a dying mother, about a desperate girl, about an engineer who learned that one person choosing to care could change everything. Park never sought recognition. He spent his remaining years on Seven, teaching young engineers, training the next generation of builders and dreamers. He died peacefully, surrounded by students who called him grandfather, in a settlement that now had more water than it could use. They named the central water garden after him. The plaque was simple, just a few words carved in stone. "For the man who remembered that humans never give up." And on clear nights, when the stars shone bright over Seven, children would gather in that garden and listen to the old stories. Stories about a time when water was precious, when the consortium ruled with fear, when humans were dying slowly in the dust. Stories about a girl named who changed everything. The children would look up at the sky, at the stars where humans now traveled freely, building and exploring and dreaming. And they would remember the lesson that their parents and grandparents had taught them. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not break. When faced with darkness, humans light a fire. When told something is impossible, humans find a way. When the universe says no, humans say yes. This is what makes them dangerous. This is what makes them beautiful. This is what makes them human. Humanity first, humanity forever.